Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We have four top producing agents from around the country: Noble Black from New York City, Chris Cortazzo from Malibu, and Joyce from Beverly Hills. They will be giving us some insight into the luxury market and how COVID-19 is affecting it in their respective markets. We'll start out with Noble is from New York City, one of the top brokers there, number one team at Douglas Elliman. He's been named one of the top 10 agents by the Wall Street Journal in New York and specializes in ultra-luxury real estate in Manhattan and holds numerous sales records. Chris Cortazzo is Malibu's most iconic agent, having represented many high-profile business leaders and celebrities. Chris holds over $5 billion in sales as a record and has a deep knowledge of Malibu's luxury market. Finally, referred to as the First Lady of Luxury Real Estate and the Billionaire's Broker by The Hollywood Reporter, Joyce is one of the most influential luxury agents with over $4.5 billion in sales. Specializing in Beverly Hills and the surrounding luxury markets, Joyce has extensive knowledge and experience working with high-profile and international clients. So we'll start out with Noble in New York City. I know obviously this is, the hardest hit market. It's kind of the epicenter of what's going on. How is it being affected? Is business taking place? Are showings taking place?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just brought everything to a screaming halt. So we're, I think this is the 8th week I've been outside the city. There's a little bit of business going on, but it's truly just a fraction of what it was. When we started this, you had contracts, obviously, that had been signed before. From what I'm hearing, most everything is still continuing to close. Buyers now that had signed a contract that had not yet closed are often going back asking for a little bit of negotiation off. And you're getting some new things that are signed, but by and large, those that are getting signed are lower price points. And those things where the buyer had already seen the property in person first. So there's very, very little that's happening strictly virtually. For many of the properties, we can't even go have a virtual tour made right now. So if that's not something that was done before, then it's very hard even getting that done. But, the tenor of the inquiries has changed over the last few weeks. Certainly the volume of inquiries has changed. So we've been seeing a lot more buyers become active, asking for virtual tours, asking or expressing interest in properties. So I think that's, going to continue. And by all accounts, Cuomo said we're going to start kind of unlocking May 15th. I think that won't be New York City, but we're all hoping that sometime in June we'll be back at some degree of work, doing some in person at some point.
So do you think it's more the physical limitations, obviously, that are preventing a lot of the business from taking place? Or do you think if you were allowed to do, the more virtual tours and showings, do you think that there's a lot of buyers out there?
I think there's a lot of buyers out there. In general, I mean, if you look at where our market obviously has been softening for the last 2 years, and really the volume was down a lot. If you look back though, at the end of February and March, we had a really large uptick in terms of volume. I think the first 10 days of March, we did double what we had done a year ago. So you really did start seeing people coming back into the market. Depending on where you're looking, our market was probably down, a good 15%, maybe a little bit more. So buyers had finally started coming back in, realizing they were getting good deals. Sellers had gotten the memo, had lowered the prices to where it was realistic. And then this all happened. So I think there is a lot of pent-up demand. That said, I think the virtual tours will be helpful, but people I think are still going to want to walk into the property. I don't think they're going to buy it totally sight unseen. There's just too much risk going on in terms of the economics, in terms of COVID, and then to take a risk of buying something totally sight unseen, unless you're an investor getting it for a steal of a price, unless you're getting a huge discount, something like that. But for the most part, for people buying for their own use, the virtual tour is great, but it's not going to be, I think, until we can walk them through the properties again that we really see volume go back up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've done maybe 2 transactions where a buyer has bought sight unseen, but by and large, I think, yes, virtual tours are important because people, they see place 6 or 7 times on average online first. But, realistically, it's a place they're going to call home or a second home. Or they want to see it in person, which makes total sense. And one last question for you. With the Hamptons, do you think the market's going to increase because it's, more social distancing, it's more, suburban?
Yeah, I think this has been and will continue to be good for the Hamptons. They've been soft for a number of years. Certain villages are doing better, but they've really, I think across the board, everyone's been a lot busier out here. So you've had a tremendous rental season in the spring, which literally never existed before. So you walk down the street and it's like an August weekend. Literally every house is full of people. For rentals, I think that will certainly continue this summer. And the brokers that I know have all been very busy working with buyers as well. So prices, I think, have not, other than the rental prices are definitely up. On the buy side, the prices have not yet risen, but I think that's probably only a matter of time for certain pockets, just because the inventory is really being worked through quite dramatically in certain places.
That makes sense. We're seeing a lot of that in Napa Valley near here. It's, especially in the rental market for the summer, and people wanting to get out of the city. Chris, I know you're in Malibu. I would imagine that Malibu rental market is on fire with people wanting.
We've never been busier, Justin. Absolutely chaotic. I have 4 leasing specialists, and we're just working, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Aren't we, baby boy? This is my little baby boy in yellow.
I was going to say, Chris, no one's listening to you. We're just all watching him.
It doesn't matter what I say, right?
Right. Yeah.
The distraction.
No, but Justin, it's so exciting for us because, we got wiped out by the fires. It burned Western Malibu over a year ago. And so we were kind of licking our wounds on that. And then COVID hit, and actually everyone is fleeing we're getting people from New York, Aspen, San Francisco, a lot of people from San Francisco, and obviously Los Angeles. That seems to be our busiest section. But I'm selling, I'm leasing, and, people are not going to Europe this summer. So I feel that once people get to experience the Malibu lifestyle, anyone who's leasing is going to want to buy. So I'm really confident of the Malibu market right now.
And again, who wouldn't want to be stuck in a house on the beach in Malibu for the summer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And do you think it's being affected on the same level? I would imagine it's a busier market maybe than even Los Angeles or Beverly Hills to a degree.
Joyce would have to answer that one, but yeah, Malibu is I've never seen it so frantic right now. And I think that's what you're experiencing, Noble, in the Hamptons. And a question, Noble, a lot of the agents from New York are now in the Hamptons. Are you going to start entering that market as well?
That's not the plan. And we've done a few things out here in the past, but it's not something that I've focused on. It's not something that, frankly, I'm an expert in. So until 8 weeks ago, I had more than enough to keep me busy in the city. We'll see if that changes. But until now, it's been a matter of kind of referring to brokers that are experts out here that take care of the clients. Certainly, there's been other clients that are asking me, my opinions on it or wanting me to go look at something with them. But for the most part, I've kind of referred it out and had no plans to move out here permanently in terms of business.
Because I know Joyce she's also an expert in Malibu, and we work a lot together, which is really nice.
Yeah, Joyce, how are you seeing the effects in the Beverly Hills, Bel Air market in Malibu?
Well, we're kind of in between, I would say, because we certainly did not experience the total shutdown that New York did. We were able to show properties through the lockdown, only unoccupied properties for a while. And then last week, we were given permission for showings of occupied homes, provided that everyone gave their consent, everyone wore masks and gloves, and there was a limit on how many people could go into the house. So we are showing, overall, I did a careful analysis of the market. And when people compare the first quarter of this year versus last year, that's irrelevant because you have to compare April to April. And if you look at that, I would say if you analyze the whole West Side market, sales are off in general 40% in the luxury market. And that's basically properties in excess of $2 million. And but prices have not been impacted by that because so many people have withdrawn their properties from the market. We've seen nearly a 50% reduction in inventory. So that has caused prices to remain somewhat stable. There are isolated cases of really motivated sellers that have taken a low offer, but that is the rarity. For the most part, prices have remained stable. So we have fewer buyers in the market and we have fewer listings, but we are selling, just not in the volume that we would like to be selling. So I think the smart buyer or seller is a very good idea to enter the market now, because the buyers have less competition and the sellers have less competition. So, waiting to see what's going to happen is probably not a good idea.
That makes sense. And I know you were one of the listing agents on the Chartwell estate, which obviously sold for a major record price, 165 million. Do you think that do you think during this period in the next year, you're going to see other 100 million plus deals closing in the area?
Well, obviously we hope so. Last year was a real record year, if you think about it. I closed my sale in December, and there were 2 other $100 million sales in 2019, which made a record. I mean, to have $300 million sales in 1 year is an absolute first. So, and then of course we have the Jeff Bezos, David Geffen sale that just closed last Friday. So, that bodes well for the very high end. So it's really, I think, hard to predict. Malibu's strength and their market that's so strong will maybe lead the way. But it's really hard. It's hard really to predict at this point what's going to happen.
That makes sense. And how's the market for like the 1 to 2 million, the sub 3 million in Los Angeles?
That's the most active. I would say that generally is the most active. And one of the things that I think is going to happen is the fact that we've all been closeted in our homes enhances the importance of your home. And so those that can afford to move up and buy a larger house, I've gotten calls from clients who say, I don't want to be in a condominium, I want a garden. And, I'm thrilled about that. And then other people who have big houses, they don't want to maintain them and they want to make a change too. So all of a sudden your house has become the most important thing in your life.
Yeah, and I think that is a major change that this is affecting. I mean, I think you're right. People are like, well, they're stuck here and they're like, do I like this place? Maybe not. Let's find out I like it.
Yes.
And it's particularly with the ability to work mobily and do it efficiently now. I think it's easier to live in Malibu and do work even if you have work around the world. So
well, Malibu has always been a great escape for people from LA. And I think we probably the largest segment of Chris's business are people in Los Angeles with second homes, and this is obviously going to drive the Malibu market. I mean, he's absolutely right. He's going to be the king of the May here.
That makes sense. And how are you finding virtual tools and the virtual showings? Are those effective for you, or would you kind of think like in general people do want to see it in person?
Yeah, there are very few sales that are being made sight unseen. Very few.
Joyce, are they asking for all the virtual before they come see it first in person? Or do they want to see like a virtual tour before they make an actual tour? Are you requiring that? Or?
I'm not requiring that, but I've always had, for the most part, I've had videos on nearly every one of my listings. So going into this, I was prepared. I did not use that Matterport, which a lot of people are using, which is that 3D virtual tour, which to me doesn't really give an accurate portrayal of the house because it's kind of skewed. But
I think it's also really slow too. I lose interest. I don't know.
It's more difficult, but now I feel like we need to do that too, because I guess some people like it. So
well, I was going to say, I think here that's where people tend to be going, and that seems to be the request that we're getting. So it's not even a matter of doing a video, because the video you can kind of highlight what we think are the best parts and kind of gloss over things where something may need work or it's not so flattering, right? The Matterport seems to be like, it's all the bumps and bruises and the good and the bad. And I think for New York, at least, again, it seems like people want to see all of that before they decide if they want to come and see something in person, kind of expose themselves.
Because I think a condo is tight, so with a Matterport it's okay, but in a house the Matterport is tight and it doesn't really give you the feeling. Anyway, that's my impression.
You mentioned that a lot of people have taken their homes off the market. I think it's so important to keep your home on the market, because
I do too.
And they have nothing to do except look at real estate in their spare time. So I think I strongly feel that having your home on the market is imperative right now, because people are doing their research, and once everyone feels more safe to get out, then I think, you know, you're ahead of the pack on that. So
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that for sure. I mean, there's definitely, like you said, there's far less competition now, and the buyers are they're out there and they're taking advantage of the low rates as well. So makes a lot of sense. What, and other than, you know, obviously physical limitations with showings, do you think that are there certain listing strategies you've taken now that that have shown to be more effective with attracting buyers than prior?
Well, I love Instagram. I
Yeah.
mean, I think more people are looking at Instagram, and I've gotten calls, you know, right immediately after I posted a property. So I find that very effective.
yeah.
How about you, Noble?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're working social media as much as we can and as much as is appropriate right now. I think everyone's kind of, again, New York's a little different from the other markets. The sentiment in the city for so much of this at the beginning was not something where you really wanted to be out front as much. That has started changing. But yeah, I think the social media is something that everyone is certainly playing up. For listing strategies here in New York, again, we can't show. So it seems like there's been some people that have taken things off the market. For the most part, people are leaving them on, but they're also not listing new listings. So something that was on the market is kind of staying. Street Easy, some of the other sites stopped counting days, you know, just because people were fearful of letting it rack up a lot of days. So they took that away, but people were still leaving it on. But again, the new business is all kind of stopped. So I think, again, once we get to where we can start doing things, I think you'll see a lot of new listings, and then the new technology, the new tools will be, everyone's going to be doing Matterport, everyone's going to be doing videos, even if they hadn't before. It's going to be a lot more of the tools that, given kind of the size of our properties, we didn't necessarily always do in the way that in California you would. You know, I'm sure in California, as Joyce was saying, like you always would do a video, you always would do different tours.
Right.
You know, you could be selling something that's very expensive in New York, but it still may be a 2-bedroom, and it's just the video didn't necessarily always, you know. So, but I think now it's going to be a different world. I think people will be expecting all of that.
Makes sense. And what about for all of you in terms of, you know, getting foreign buyers? I mean, obviously they're significant portion in our market, you know, Malibu and New York and Beverly Hills. Do you think that that's going to change? Do you think they're going to come back in full force? What are your thoughts with that?
I think they're going to come back, but right now with everyone so fearful traveling, Justin, I think it's a little bit more problematic. I think we're going to be relying more internally within the United States. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Definitely.
What do you guys feel?
No, I agree. I mean, I definitely think the foreign buyers will come back. I think you're going to see some buyers that are buying just, you know, safe place to park their money. We had one of the few deals that's large that got done in the city a couple of weeks ago. It was a $27 million bulk buy, and it was a foreign buyer that just wanted, again, kind of a safe haven. I think you'll see more of that, but certainly, you know, the limitations on travel or just the lack of wanting to travel is going to affect some buyers.
Yeah.
Well, I lost a summer lease. We were in final negotiation, and it was a Russian coming to spend the summer in Bel Air, and Russia put complete restrictions on travel. She wasn't able to come. So, you know, I think we're going to see a lot of that.
And here's just a general question for newer agents in the market who, you know, don't have a huge social network. What do you think? Like, obviously they can't get business from open houses right now, and who knows when that'll come back. Like, what do you think the best channels? What are the opportunities that might emerge for them, and how do you think that'll change for them getting started? Like, if you're a new agent starting out now, how would you go about getting clients?
It's a tough question.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
It's a little bit more challenging. I just think this is their training ground. They need to really take the time, drive around, be confident, be educated on the market. Because when they get a buyer actually in the car, they need to know their materials and the different values in the different areas. This is their time to really understand and educate themselves, and they have to do that.
Yeah.
You're going to lose the buyers. They're not going to have the confidence in you.
I think that's true. I think agents have to be, knowledge sources, and they have to know the market inside and out, including, when that house sold, who lives in that house, who are the neighbors. And, I think that's what impresses clients now. I mean, obviously they can get the regular standard info online in 2 seconds for the most part.
Well, I was going to say, this is going to be a really tough market for a lot of brokers in general. I mean, frankly, I think a lot are going to end up getting out of it, but for new brokers especially, because we're moving to a market where so much of it literally is going to be virtual before they ever set foot in the door. And new brokers are going to have a hard time getting that knowledge. I mean, getting into listings, certainly in the city, getting into a building to a listing is going to be very, very tough. So if you don't already have the experience of knowing what this building is like, or what this apartment looks into, or, Chris and Joyce, kind of what this particular block is like, more than what you can get from driving down the street, I think they're going to have a hard time, because so much is going to be online for the buyers to see themselves. So it's going to be hard to add the value.
Yeah, you have.
And so much of our business is based on relationships. And, as a new broker, you develop relationships at an open house, as you said, Justin. And, now those kind of one-on-one meetings are going to be limited. So, they have to rely on the relationships they have to generate business instead of developing new relationships.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at all of us, we're very social, and we're always out. I mean, I very rarely go to an event and Joyce is not there.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do
together
without my basketball and football games.
But it's a different twist. But when I got in the business 26 years ago, it was a very competitive market then, and it still is now. But if you have the drive and the ambition, and just anyone can be a top agent.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, there's thousands of ways, by the way, to be a top agent. Everyone on this panel has a different style. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's funny, we're launching, this brokerage Avenue 8 in the middle of this crisis, but I'm a firm believer that we don't really use office spaces as much anymore. Everything is kind of going virtually. And so this whole situation, which is mobile, is really kind of increased and give us this traction, which is really interesting. So I think in the same way, while people used to do business a certain way, new technologies emerge, new ways of doing business, and agents adapt. And I think big agents will come out of this with new strategies for sure. So now I'll open it to questions from the audience. We have one, Blakely Hole from San Francisco. How does the MLS clear cooperation on pocket listings play into the new normal for real estate? So this is more of a California question. They kind of put a ban on the pocket listings in the traditional way. Has that been an issue for you, or how are you getting around that for Joyce and Chris?
That is a definite complication as far as a lot of our clientele, because they are seeking privacy and they do not want their houses online. And so the multiple listing service has come up with an alternative for us. But my understanding is that platform for pocket listings is not up and running until June 1st. So there's a bit of a glitch. So we're in the process of trying to work that out. But what can happen with people who want to have pocket listings for their properties is they can list with us, and then we will be able to put it on that platform, and it will only go to brokers. It will not go to the public. And that way they get a wide viewership, and they get an opportunity for any buyer that's out there to know about the house without the public being aware of their property. So that was a great concession that the NAR came up with as far as encouraging participation in the MLS and pacifying our sellers. Wouldn't you say, Chris?
I would, but unfortunately, when you have a celebrity client and it goes out to the whole brokerage community, the next second it's in the press. So, it makes it a little bit more challenging.
That's true. But nowadays, the press get their hands on everything. I don't care. I mean, they're following the celebrities when they go to look at the house. Right. So, it's You know, even when I first started my career in 1970, in the mid 70s, I sold the Sonny and Cher house. And that was supposed to be top secret. It was the biggest house in town. Cher was, you know, had just divorced her husband. That property was unbelievable. It's now called Owlwood. And I had it in escrow. Nobody was supposed to know about it. And there was a scandal sheet in the grocery store called the Inquirer. And I was checking out in the market. I thought no one knew about this sale. And there in the headlines, Cher selling her house. So, you know, I thought, how in the world did they find out about this? But no matter how tight-lipped you are and how few people know, there's a gardener, there's a friend of a friend. It's just crazy. But that's unfortunate.
For sure. All right, here's another question from Amir Gupta in San Francisco. What are the existential threats to the market that you see? How long will it take for some of the economic trends to play out in SF, New York, LA?
I think anybody's guess as to how long it's going to take to play out, right? Like nobody knows that. Once people feel safe going about, then I think it's going to be, you know, it's real estate, right? So people are going to want to have the home that they like. I think that just as we discussed earlier, I think for the secondary market, anybody that has the means is going to want to have something that's drivable that they can easily get to. So I think that's going to be really good news for Chris. I think that's going to be great news for the Hamptons, for some of the suburbs. And I think, you know, as we were saying, if you're in LA or if you're in New York, if you're in a home that you don't necessarily love, then you're going to be really reassessing that right now. And maybe that means you buy something larger. That may mean that you do remodel. Maybe you downsize and you buy in Malibu. But I think there's going to be activity just as soon as people feel like it's safe to go about it. I think at the beginning, you're going to have a lot of kind of opportunistic buyers that come in, and it's going to be the sellers that have to sell to get it jump started. And then I think everyone else comes in pretty quickly after that. In terms of, so I guess the answer is for the existential threats, like I don't really think there's a realistic one. I think people are still going to want to live in New York City, still have second or fifth homes in the city. Same thing, certainly true of LA and Malibu. You know, I think it would really take something where people never want to be in the cities again. And I just don't think that's going to happen. Even if you look at like 9/11, a bunch of people moved out to the Hamptons after that. Within 3 years, most of those had moved back in the city. And this is something that's affecting everywhere. So it's not just a city or a large city kind of thing.
And it's even in suburbs. That's totally true. All right, one question.
I feel though that everyone's getting a little bit more accustomed to this new lifestyle, and we're feeling a little bit safer venturing out these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we're being cautious.
Yeah.
You know, we're making sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to do.
Adjusting to the new normal, totally. Okay, one question from Shalini in San Francisco. What would you recommend? What are you seeing in terms of pricing? So, you know, obviously the market has gone down a little bit. Are you seeing that they're keeping, you know, pricing it the same way and just expecting more negotiation, or are you seeing prices adjusted from the start and more transparent pricing? In San Francisco, for example, you know, the strategy is really unique. It's to underprice a property if it's sub 5 million, underprice it, and then expect, you know, set an offer date a week later and expect it to go up, you know, 20%. I know that's not the norm in New York. What are you seeing?
For New York, I mean, we're already seeing some negotiations being built in, like I say, for contracts that were signed. That said, it seems to be not everyone is renegotiating. It's about 50% last time, you know, kind of spoke with a bunch of people. And it seems like the renegotiation is anywhere from like 3 to 5 or 6%, maybe 7 or 8 at the most. But New York works with a 10% deposit. No one that I know of is walking away from that deposit. So no one thinks implicitly that the property is worth 10% less, right? Certainly the offers that you're seeing come across right now are very aggressive, but they're not really being answered by the sellers. You know, again, I think we're in this kind of stalemate waiting until we can start doing something. Knight Frank publishes a report alongside Delaware Solomon that just came out this morning, the numbers on that, and they kind of quantified all the different cities for the next year and then 21. And, you know, they said for New York, which is not a surprise, they put that in the down 0 to 5%. I would probably say I think we'll go another 4, 5, 6% down. But I don't think it's going to be dramatic. Again, we had gone a lot already. And then they actually had LA And certainly Malibu doing very well into 21. I think this year would be down slightly or a little flat, but they have that going up. I'm curious what you guys think. But again, this is not, I don't think, going to be, there's no part of me that thinks this is going to be a 10 to 15% down from here for New York. I just don't see that. I think there will be some softness, but it's going to be more of a time getting people comfortable first.
I think we're also super lucky that we're in these 3-4 markets that are super resilient and have a lot of money. So I think they're going to stand out from the rest of the country for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think for Chris and Joyce both, like LA to me, the last 5 to 7 years really has become kind of an international city. I think it used to be that people had a place there if they lived there for some reason or had to be there. I think it's now joining New York and some other cities where, if you have enough money, you want to have a home in LA. And then I think implicit with that is Malibu, right? Either as a second home community to LA or San Francisco, or in its own right, just kind of this, beautiful enclave. But I think especially you've got some good headwinds at their back for both of those places. And again, New York.
Florida is also great as well because of the tax benefits. So I think Florida has seen a huge uptick as well.
Yes.
I know that we've lost a few people from New York going to Florida just to avoid
taxes.
Yeah, and actually getting back to the other question, that would actually be the real threat, I think, to New York is, they've toyed around with like a pied-à-terre tax in New York. They've increased the mansion tax. The thing that really could kill New York would be self-inflicted. And if that's if Albany really raises the taxes a lot more. Because as Chris said, we've already seen a lot of the hedge fund folks have moved down to Florida. It's still by no means the majority, but it's enough to matter. And those are people with real money to pay real taxes. So that could continue. And my friends in Florida, I mean, everyone that we know down there is really busy right now with rentals and people looking to buy. It's a good point, Chris.
We've seen that up here as well with a lot of like Austin, Texas, because there's just a big tech community there, and then Florida as well. So it makes that total sense. Self-inflicted for sure. All right, question from Katie in, I think, SoCal. Did you each start out in the Lux market or did you evolve into it? Advice for those who want to get into the luxury market. I know it's obviously tough. Every agent wants to. Not every agent has a massive social network, but then again, a lot of top agents didn't start out that way either. So, yeah.
I started out with a small boutique firm in Beverly Hills that handled a lot of the important properties. And I started out not with the intention of focusing on luxury, but simply because I knew someone who worked there who encouraged me to go into the real estate business. So it was happenstance that I went into that firm and learned from a wonderful man by the name of Jack Hupp, who wrote the Code of Ethics for the Beverly Hills Realty Board and was an All-American basketball star for USC. He taught me.
I know you well.
Yes.
I lucked out in 1994. I sold, my first sale was $5 million. And 8 years ago, I sold that same listing for 60.
Wow.
So it was a huge sale, but I got lucky. And I used that to my advantage and just worked that much harder. I didn't just rely on that one sale, but that just catapulted me just to work that much harder. And it's not an easy business. You have to work. All of us work 7 days a week. I've been in Aspen with both Noble and Joyce, and we are at a lunch together, and we're always on the phone the whole time.
That's horrible. It's true.
Occasionally talk to each other.
Yeah, occasionally. But when you're around real estate agents, we're on the phone the entire time, and you kind of that's our life. So.
Kind of like
the best part of my friendship with Chris was I decided I needed to take him out to dinner, right? So I invite him to dinner at this wonderful restaurant in Santa Monica. It was his favorite. And we have this very lavish dinner. And all of a sudden, one of his clients pops up and says hello to us and picks up the bill.
That worked out.
Yeah.
Yes, it worked out very well.
He invites me all the time for dinner.
No, I think starting out, I think the best thing is to work for a top agent on their team for sure. And just start out doing, basic things because you're going to learn from that that agent, you're going to be exposed to bigger deals and bigger open houses than you would on your own. And ultimately, that will become your network and sphere of influence. And so I think the best way, and I also believe, you hang out with the clients that you want to get. So, if your goal is to get clients buying in Beverly Hills, maybe hang out, if rather than get a drink or coffee at your neighborhood place, maybe hang out and get coffee at that place where you're more likely to put yourself in a position to be lucky, because luck very rarely just falls in your lap. And I think all of you clearly have done that throughout your career.
Well, there's not a line I'm not in. I talk to everyone because I just really like people. So I'm always talking to everyone. I mean, that's just always been my spirit, and that's who I am. So you have to, if you're going to be successful, you have to be really outgoing and wake up, be happy every day. Because if you're happy, you surround people kind of.
The energy attracts positive energy.
So you have to clear your mind every day. Sometimes it's hard, but especially, being so isolated and everything, but you have to have that positive spirit. So
no doubt about it. There's nothing better than concentrating on the positive in your life. And most everyone can find something positive to focus on. Yeah. And just smiling, when you smile, you all of a sudden feel better.
And I also say, Joyce, smile on the phone.
That's true.
Yes.
Smile on the phone.
I learned that as a young agent from the owner of Beverly Hills Mercedes. I was representing him, and I would sit in his office waiting to talk to him while he was on the phone. And I noticed he was always smiling. And I never thought about it. But ever since then, I tell my staff that's what they should do. They have to be smiling when they're on the phone.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Positive energy and being a people person for sure is necessary. Okay, quick question. Mary Ann from Danville is asking, are you seeing more, with the low rates, are you seeing more finance properties? And obviously in the ultra luxury, it's not as much an issue, but are you seeing more loans taken out or is consistently more all cash?
Well, those that have cash are thinking that they're going to get the bargains. I do notice that. Yeah. They're the ones that are more apt to throw in the low offers.
That's totally true.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
That's definitely true. I mean, I don't know. For us, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get a better price, but they try to be aggressive with that. But I think we are seeing more that are financing, not because they need to, but just money's so cheap. So they're financing a piece of it just because they can make a much bigger return elsewhere.
I think in San Francisco, it's more an issue like if you have financing because there are less appraisers working right now and the banks are backed up new financing, it could delay the close. So those, like you said, who want to be more competitive are definitely all cash. They're the only ones that can do like a 1-week close.
Right, but also the appraisers right now, they don't want to come in the house. They're doing drive-bys and relying on photos. So it's a whole different animal these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, question from Ryan. Who are the current buyers? Are they liquidating funds and putting it into real estate? I guess we somewhat talked about that. Do you have anything else to say on that? Or it seems like, do you find that people are putting into real estate because they feel like it's a safer investment than other things right now? Or what are you seeing in terms of that?
I see people enjoying their investment by living in their beautiful homes. So I think it's a different consciousness. This COVID is definitely, I think, makes everyone reevaluate their lifestyles. And I think that why not have a beautiful home to go to, especially since they're saying most likely it's going to come back next winter. People will want their retreat to escape to.
So, and I think people to that point, they're going to be working from home more. I think they've been forced to adopt the technologies that are out there, like Zoom and so forth, and realize that it's actually pretty efficient to work from home and not pay for necessarily an office lease, for example. So, I think it's definitely going to change our behavior and the way real estate is sold and people operate.
And also, Justin, I think people are more understanding. I mean, they could hear me with my son in the background, and it adds a humanity to our business, and I think it's all good. You have to be a chameleon, you have to change with the times, and we're all doing that. And it's exciting times. I'm really excited about the future of real estate and our markets, for sure.
All right, one question here from Andrew. If you have a buyer like in Malibu or LA, or I guess there's not as many natural disasters in New York City or San Francisco, but if there are earthquakes, if they're worried about, fires and so forth, how do you mitigate that?
I mean, you could step out of a street corner in New York City and get hit by a car. I mean, you can buy in certain areas that are less prone to, there's less risk for sure. But we all have to live our lives. It's interesting because the fires can come through and then the hills turn green and we move on and Malibu is beautiful again. But in that time, there's opportunities. So I think there's different opportunities that people will take advantage of for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. Cool. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining, Chris, Joyce, and Noble. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to see everybody.
Yes, likewise.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for organizing this.
For sure. We'll all have to meet up soon for sure when this is over. And
Absolutely.
stay safe.
One thing I want to say, Justin, really quickly, that it's so nice to have allies in different markets because we really rely on each other. And to be a top agent, don't try to be so greedy in different marketplaces that you're not familiar with. Definitely create allies in these different marketplaces. And we are all giving so much business to each other. And it's really nice to have friends in the real estate market in different cities.
Absolutely. And to that point, I think when you're not an expert, it goes back to being a knowledge source. If you're not an expert in a certain market, you're not going to look good for your client and you're not going to be adding the value that you should be. So, I have total respect for that and agree with that. So cool. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great one. Stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Take care all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for tuning in as well.